Okay, this is going to be a critique of Socionics. For those of you who don't know, Socionics is an interpretation of Jung's typology done by Aushua Augustinowicz. She was a economist, sociologist, etc. She was synthesizing Jung's psychological types and Anthony Kempinski's information metabolism. Socionics got popular in the East, in Russia. There's a few schools of Socionics there. And recently it's been gaining a little bit of traction online in the West. And some people have been tempted to synthesize their understanding of Jung's typology with Socionics. And I used to be one of those people. My first video was a Socionics video. I think I was the first one to have what Socionics called the hidden agenda function, a video specifically about that on YouTube. But I've since seen sort of the divergence between Socionics and Jung's typology, and I want to discuss that divergence and bring it into light, because it's not something that has been discussed a lot as far as I've seen. So the main divergence and my main criticism of Socionics is that functions as we understand them in Jung's typology are not functions in Socionics. So what we describe as a function, we're talking about extroverted intuition and introverted sensation and extroverted sensation, etc. In Socionics, extroverted intuition, introverted sensation, extroverted sensation, etc. Those are what are divided into, those denote information aspects and information elements. So I'm going to read the definition of information aspects. I'm getting this from wikisocion.org if you want to check out my sources. The 8 information aspects form a category that is unique to Socionics. Augusta, influenced by Anthony Kempinski's theory of information metabolism, concluded that the information that enters the psyche can be divided into different kinds, just as Jung divided psychic functions into different kinds. So that's information aspect. That means that information out in the world can be divided into different parts that are inherent in the object. So the possibilities of what this lamp could eventually be, that's extroverted intuition, and that's inherent in the object, the information. So that's information aspects. Now information elements is a little different. Information elements are 8 mental categories that play a key role in interpersonal interaction. They are denoted using the symbols and names as the information aspects, so N, E, and I. The difference between them is that information elements are subjective properties of the psyche, whereas information aspects are objective properties of reality independent from the psyche. So we get this definition that information elements are rooted in the psyche and they're subjective, whereas information aspects are not rooted in the psyche and are objective. But then we never expand on this. That's never discussed again, and information elements are treated pretty much synonymously with information aspects. The information elements are directly linked to the information aspect. So the information element is perceiving the relevant information aspect. So extroverted intuition is perceiving the inherent possibilities of this lamp, or of reality. It's got that section on reality. So as I said before, we get that definition that the elements are rooted in the psyche, but then I said we never see that again, and any discussion of the elements as they relate to the psyche is completely lost. It just gets really vague. We get some themes, which so for introverted sensation, some themes include harmony, pleasure, health. We get states of mind. When you're in an SI state of mind, you are physically relaxed, free of irritants, enjoying the pleasure of the moment. And even here in the description of a state of mind, we get when a person is using. That's the actual quote. It's using is in quotes, and this shows that socionics really doesn't have a good understanding of how the element affects the psyche, because they don't even know how to say, using. There's no better word for that here, and they have to put using in quotes to distance themselves from it because it's not exactly right. It's just very vague in that respect. And this is another problem in socionics. We lose the subject in socionics. We only talk about the information and how it gets sorted. In Jung's typology, there's a lot of talk about how these functions influence the subject, and it's acknowledged that the information, or that the functions, are not the entire person. In socionics, we don't discuss the person at all, or enough. We only talk about the bare functions and whatnot, and the information elements. So as I was saying before, information elements become synonymous with information aspects. So for example, we divide the information elements into static and dynamic. So let me read the definition of static information element. Static information is discrete and about things that change abruptly. Dynamic information is continuous and about things that are in constant fluctuation. So yeah, we've lost any discussion of the subjective. It's just about the information itself. So the information elements are really, there seems to be no meaningful distinction that's ever discussed between them and the information aspects. And so I think if you're a layman and you're approaching Jung's typology for the first time, one of the pitfalls is to describe the functions as aspects of reality. That's not what it is in Jung's typology. In Jung's typology, a function is how you structure your psyche. It's how you approach the world and what you pay attention to. Whereas in socionics, there is it's like reality is cut into 8 different parts, and then a type is the type that prioritizes a different part. And so that's, if you're a layman in Jung's typology, that can be a very attractive definition of a function. That extroverted intuition, well, that's about possibilities. That's about connections between things. That's what that perceives. And you see that kind of language a lot on forums. And so when you start thinking like that, the natural reaction is, well, if reality is divided into 8 different parts, then it should be, logical that everyone has all functions, because everyone kind of gets the same idea of reality. And so it seems natural to view socionics as a progression on Jung's typology, because they don't just discuss the 4 aspects of reality in a type. They discuss all aspects of reality, and the type is just a different prioritization of that. Whereas what I think is that, and what I think Jung's typology is actually about, is about attention and inattention. I'll link the article where I got that phrase. It's about attention and inattention, and your just approach to reality. Reality isn't segregated into different parts that are then prioritized. Reality is just reality, and the functions determine what you're paying attention to and how you approach it. So an introverted intuitive isn't concerned with ideas per se. They're concerned with reality, and their approach to reality is going to be one that prioritizes rumination, sort of reflecting, association, and naturally those habits, that kind of cognitive phenotype, to quote Komatik, or Komatik's friend, is an approach to reality, and it's much more freeing, and it's not like the type is limited by the functions, which you could say that the type is if you're if you're really a classical Jungian. But that's neither here nor there. So that is my main critique of socionics. I want to talk a little bit about two other things. Maybe just one other thing. I think just one other thing, which is the intertype relationships. That's another core concept in socionics. And I'm critical of this just because, I'll tell you. In socionics, the relationships are way too a priori. There's not enough look at the facts. We start with a general idea that types with certain arrangements of their functions are gonna interact in much the same way. So let's take an example: an ENTP and an INFJ. So the difference between those types is the ENTP's extroverted function is introverted in the INFJ, NE to NI. And then the auxiliary function and the tertiary function, same axis, just different function stack, different placement in the function stack. So that relationship would be called in socionics the illusory relationship. And there's lots of ENTPs that have mentored INFJs, lots of INFJs that have mentored ENTPs, and lots of ENTPs that have dated INFJs. And it seems to be a pretty positive relationship. And you can go to celebrity types for lots of examples of it. But then you also pair the INTP with the ESTJ. That's the same relationship. That's an illusory relationship because you have the dominant function of the INTP is extroverted in the ESTJ, and then the auxiliary tertiary axis is the same. And yet you don't see the same quality or frequency of relationship between INTPs and ESTJs, and you can ask pretty much any INTP if that's the case, and they'll say yeah. So first of all, there's that problem. It's way too a priori. It doesn't look at the facts enough. And there's also the problem that when you have this system, you're describing a huge number of people. You're describing, either when you're describing ISFJs and ESFJs getting along, you're describing like more than a fourth of the population and how they're going to be interacting. And I think there's just far too much frequency in that case to say something very meaningful about quality of relationship. I think there is something meaningful to be said about the relationship, but not quality and not ease of familiarity. I think familiarity is something that can be said. I'm talking about ease of getting to know one another. I think that is something that is very difficult to talk about with this large frequency because I think there's too much variation in the type. And just one last thing before I end the video. Before anyone says that socionics doesn't describe or the intertype relationships don't describe what I'm trying to say that they describe. Ashwa Augustinowicz said that if a type is in a relationship with its conflicting type, that will lead to a neurosis and a very hostile, bad relationship. So, from the horse's mouth, that is what she said. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for now. I'll see Angry Socionics in the